Hey, it's 12:30. We'll get started. Welcome back. And if this is your first time, welcome to today. So just to acclimate yourself with this month's mental health awareness campaign, you have been receiving emails if you signed up. Also, fabulous Rebecca from our population health team has posted them in the chat. But this month, I really wanted to give people tools that they could take away that you could work on this week, next month, 6 months down the road, and essentially help set up your brain in a way that it's organized to decrease anxiety and stress. Despite we're going to be faced with that, right? We all have anxiety and stress, but using these tools that will be automatic after you practice them. So that's what the handouts are for. We're going to go over them. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, that's okay. You're not supposed to. We're going to walk through those, but just knowing that that's the idea behind today's presentation and what we did last week as well. So let's get started. Okay, essentially, what are we going to do today? I was talking about this, looking at evidence-based. So all the things that we're going to talk about are rooted in science, meaning that there have been randomized control trials showing that there is a benefit in what we're doing. And we're going to look at cognitive reframing and behavioral activation is the two takeaways that you have. Now, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed either by having multiple options. Really, what that's meant to do is to give you some things to work on and not feeling like you have to do everything overnight. That will end up we won't do anything because we'll feel too overwhelmed. So thinking, what speaks to me? There are a lot of different personalities that are coming today, a lot of different challenges that are facing somebody, and avoidance behaviors to those. So thinking, this kind of speaks to me. I'd like to work on this and maybe something down the road. So you have options and build this plan to build resilience in the face of stress and anxiety. So last week, we talked about, if you were here, and also that recording's available, we talked about this avoidance loop, meaning that we have this stressor and we don't want to do it. And so we'll find a different activity that provides us this temporary relief. And then what happens is it feels good in that short term, and then it just builds an intensity and things are typically worse than they were before. But anyone here who's procrastinated, which I'm sure is probably nearly everybody, knows that this is a habit we do. So today we're going to talk about, still in the face of stress and anxiety, how can we become more resilient? And I just want you to think, what does resilience mean to you? This could mean different things to different people, but ultimately what it means is that, or for me at least, I think of being faced with challenges and being able to work through them without being overwhelmed, anxious, sad, depressed, name that emotion that you get when you're faced with a difficult situation. And so today I'm hoping that you can use these tools to build resilience. And the other thing I want you to think about is a time where you showed resilience in the past. I like to say we've all survived 100% of our worst days. And so we have been resilient in the past, and thinking about what may have helped you in that moment. And then just what are common challenges that you're facing right now that are testing your resilience? Okay, well, if you don't have common challenges that are testing your resilience, I could give you a few ideas because there are plenty of things that we have in our lives. So think about work or job-related stress. We have conflicts with family members, friends, relationships, health issues, chronic illness, and that may be with us or a loved one, financial difficulties. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like my grocery bill continues to get higher and higher. I'm now joking that I'm down to just like eating potatoes and oats and beans. Parenthood, major life changes, maybe moving, maybe you just started a new job, loss of a loved one, caring for an aging parent, lack of community. So there are plenty of things in our lives that challenge our resilience. But what are practices that help? So think about what are things that you do. I love to walk my dog. I love to read. But thinking, practicing mindfulness or meditation, having a strong support network. Our past Surgeon General has a report out on our isolation crisis. And in this report, he shows how being isolated actually has negative physical outcomes in our health. So much so that being isolated is equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, meaning that people who are isolated have more mental health, have worse mental health outcomes, worsening types of chronic health conditions like diabetes, heart disease, stroke. So it's really important that we have this system of people around us that really rally in good times and in bad. Exercise. Exercise is fantastic for our brain. It releases neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. So essentially, when we go out and move our bodies, we get flooded with neurotransmitters that make us more motivated, that we feel happier, actually can help with pain as well. And then setting realistic goals for ourselves, taking small action, again, so we're not overwhelmed. And we're going to talk about problem solving using therapeutic tools today. Boundaries are always good to set when we're thinking about resilience. Okay, so let's look at a cycle of depression. Now, many people can experience depression from different things. So thinking a life event, unmediated stress. Some of us just happen to be more genetically predisposed. Right now, we're just going to look at unmediated stress. So these ongoing challenges that we haven't built resilience tools for, what can happen to our mood and then our behavior from that? And from last week and then from your materials, you remember we're focusing in cognitive behavioral therapy, meaning that if we can change the way we think about things, we ultimately change our behaviors, our actions, which changes our outcome. It's really powerful how if we change our mind, we can change our mood and we can change our circumstances. So thinking about that stress, and this can be a stress in any situation that causes anxiety, depression, hardship, and it can be long-term or short-term. So maybe think about that right now. And what thoughts are you having around that? So remember, we have these automatic thoughts. Essentially, they typically tend to go negative for some reason in our brain, but we're retraining our brain to not go negative here. Okay, so we have this stressor and then that negative thought. I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm overwhelmed. Nobody likes me. Fill in your emotion there or your thought there. And then what is your emotion related to stress? Some of us get really sad and withdrawal. Some of us feel hopeless or helpless. Other people could just be pretty irritable and agitated. And everything just seems like nails on a chalkboard. And then this can also turn into physical symptoms. So when we get into that fight or flight, when we're in the stress response system of our parasympathetic nervous system or autonomic nervous system, essentially what happens is we can get chronic headache, fatigue, and this can translate into having poor concentration, the inability to remember things, feeling like, God, why am I so foggy? I just talked about this yesterday. Why can't I get this? You know, that's the impact in our hippocampus. And having this difficulty with eating and with sleep. We see all of these negative outcomes here. Okay, then what is our behavior? Well, our body doesn't like to feel this way, right? So we go for these other activities that will release dopamine that make us feel good in the short term. But again, typically what they tend to be are behaviors that aren't really good. We call them maladaptive coping skills. So that could be drinking too much, scrolling too much on social media, social isolation, or neglecting our daily tasks. Okay, so here is one coping strategy that we're going to use today to challenge your anxious thoughts. Okay, so this is a handout that you can access, and I really want you to write this down. The reason why I want you to do that is because I want you to think of your brain essentially as it being plastic, moldable, if you will. The term of that term is called neuroplasticity. Essentially, what this means is that after we do a certain behavior consistently, it just lays down this track where it becomes automatic. We don't even have to think about doing it anymore. So think about when you first learned to brush your teeth. Your parent or your loved one, who taught you how to brush your teeth, at first it was this constant reminder. Or if you've had kids and you have taught your children to brush your teeth, there's this ongoing nightly conversation. Did you brush your teeth? Yes, I brushed my teeth. Can I smell your breath? No, you didn't brush your teeth. Go brush your teeth. And it's this constant reminding. But after a while, I imagine every single one of you here today, the first thing you did this morning when you woke up was brush your teeth. The last thing you did last night before you went to bed was brush your teeth, and you didn't even think about it. So this is essentially something that we're doing to set up us to have a habit. We're just going to train our brain to do this. But we have to do it manually the first few times while we're getting in the groove of it, while we're setting down that neural pathway in our brain. Okay, so here's how we'll work through that. I want you to think of something that is stressing you out right now. And what I want you to do is write that in the example. So pick your number one stressor. And then I want you to play this forward in your brain. I love this exercise of playing it forward. And I want you to think, what is the worst outcome that could potentially come from this? Now, I will 100% admit that I tend to have a bit more of an anxious brain. And my brain tends to go to the worst possible outcome, like death. Somebody's always going to die. The worst thing that's going to happen is death. Okay, well, what if that happens? Well, I hope that I was good enough in this earth that I can go to heaven, and then that means as much ice cream as I want. Now, what is the likelihood that this is going to be the outcome? Not likely what we imagine the worst possible situation to be. I can also think of, oh, we made a mistake at work, and then you think, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to lose my house. We go down this spiral, right? How likely is that to happen? Pretty unlikely. Okay, well, what's the best outcome? We never go to that. We never think, oh, this amazing thing could happen to us. We tend to end up going to that negative thought. And then really what happens in reality is typically somewhere in the middle. What is the most likely outcome? And then I want you to think, is this stressor going to mean anything to me in a week, in 6 months, in a year? And just to kind of play on that, think about, what were you most stressed about a year ago? And I imagine some of you would say, I don't even know, or I kind of remember, but it wasn't like, it's not really a big deal anymore. And of course, there will always be seasons of our life where there's something really big going on. That could be a health outcome, that could be fertility. There's so many things in our life. But again, we survived 100% of our worst days to be here. And the majority of the time, we let these little stressors run away with us, and they cause us to not eat or sleep or be irritated and agitated and short with our loved ones, or withdrawal. Maybe we don't go to an event and we miss out on that because we were stressed and overwhelmed, whatever that looks like. We're changing those thoughts in our brain. So please either put this on your phone or print this out, but I would love for this to be somewhere where you can easily see it and access it. And when you get an anxious thought, I want you to write it down. Then what is the worst outcome, best outcome, most likely outcome? And then is this really going to matter in a week, 6 months, or a year from now? You will notice that the more you do this, your anxiety is going to decrease. You're also going to automatically do it the more you practice this. And then when we think about that, what is our worst outcome and the likely outcome? Thinking about our irrational thoughts and our rational thoughts. this is just a practice to be able to challenge that. And again, the idea that you're going to set yourself up so in the future, you'll have less of these irrational thoughts, less stress, less anxiety, less stress on your brain. Because remember, when we have stress on our brain, we can get shrinking of our hippocampus. Remember, your hippocampus is where you store memory. It's where you have empathy and introspection. We also, when we have chronic stress on our brain, our frontal lobe's impacted by that, meaning we have difficulty making decisions. Have you ever been in a time in your life where you were stressed and you felt like you had all this brain fog, or you couldn't make a decision, or you felt very overwhelmed by just the smallest thing? And then our amygdala, the part of our fear center of our brain, it becomes overwhelmed and almost like always on high alert. We don't ever get that nice relaxation into that rest and digest. That's what happens when we continue to have these anxious thoughts and these irrational outcomes. We just are overwhelmed. Okay, so just kind of put this back together and again, orient you to what we're doing and the therapeutic tools that we're using. Again, this is a CBT tool. We're cognitively reframing. So just remember, your thoughts end up in a feeling and then it turns into an action. So here what we're going to do is we're changing our thoughts and our emotions behind that, which will in turn change our behavior. Be less short with our families, procrastinate less avoidance behavior. Okay, now remember I told you I was going to give you a few different options. Let me give you another one. And I really love behavioral activation. So behavioral activation, again, this is rooted in evidence. So, excuse me, it's a therapeutic approach. And basically what it is you're focusing on engagement in meaningful and rewarding activity. So when we think meaningful, think tasks that maybe you need to do, but you don't want to do. And this can be everything as like menial as folding the laundry and putting it away. I love doing the wash. I just hate putting it away. And then what happens? You like get this mountain of clothes that you continue to walk by and walk by and walk by, and it just gets worse and worse because you avoided it, right? And then rewarding activity, things that make you happy. I love to read, walk my dog, make yummy food with my husband. Okay, so this is going to increase our engagement in this. And essentially, by doing that, we're going to improve our mood, and then we're going to counteract the patterns of avoidance. So procrastination, the things that we've been working on because we feel a certain way about them. Essentially, what the principle is behind behavioral activation is that taking action precedes motivation. And I mean, think about some tasks that you quote unquote have to do and you feel zero motivation. And sometimes if we wait for the motivation to come, we'll just never do it. I don't know that I'll ever be motivated to fold my laundry. But if I set myself up to take an action to start, I always feel so much better after. And the sooner I do it, the better it is, right? So this is what this tool is going to help us do. Essentially, we're going to take small purposeful actions and then we're going to get that positive reinforcement, which is going to motivate us to continue. And then this translates into better mood. And then also we were talking about health outcomes, changing our health outcomes, because remember, 70% of primary care visits are related to stress and chronic lifestyle diseases. That is really significant. So just thinking about how you change your brain, how that then downstreams into physical health outcomes as well as our mental health. Okay, so you don't need to take my word for it. There are lots of studies done on this, but for those of you that have a curious, questioning mind, I just thought it would be fun to bring up a couple of studies where they have looked at behavioral activation and the outcome, and really how powerful it is. So, okay, we'll look at this first one. In 1996, a study was done. So this has been around for a while. It's not like this was invented yesterday. It compared behavioral activation to full cognitive behavioral therapy for depression. So now remember, cognitive behavioral therapy is great. That's what we've been focusing on this month. Our thoughts, how we feel, and our actions. However, this is almost like a little shortcut in the research because using just behavioral activation alone was just as effective as using full CBT. So this is for my really, really busy people that always say, okay, what is one thing? If I just had to do one thing, what would you tell me to do? Well, this is a great place to start. I think you should do all the things, but this is a great place to start. And then in 2006, there was a randomized control trial showing that behavioral activation was as effective as an antidepressant medication in treating major depression, particularly in individuals with severe symptoms. Now, I want to pause right here because I'm a practicing clinician and I prescribe medication all the time. And medications are life-saving and life-changing. So there's no demonizing in medications when we're looking at this study. Really, what we should be thinking about when we look at this is it is just a very powerful tool that we should be utilizing in our toolbox of all of the other things that we have and thinking about therapy, medication, sleep, community, what we eat, how we move our body, and then mindfulness or stress management techniques. So really thinking, gosh, this is a pretty big lever. And if you are not familiar with this, what a great opportunity to add this into your life because of how powerful it is. Okay, how do we do that? So behavioral activation, you have a worksheet for this. And again, as I told you, when you're setting a new behavior, I really want you to print this out, put it in your phone, your computer, wherever you will access it, and go through the exercise a few times until you feel like it is a habit. So first at the top, I want you to list 3 activities that you enjoy and then 3 responsibilities that you need to take care of. So for example, we use myself, things that I love, reading, being with my husband, and walking the dog. Those are 3 things that bring me joy. Then what are 3 responsibilities that I need to take care of? Well, I always have a to-do list at work, okay? So I love my job, but sometimes, there's 20 emails to answer and that can feel very overwhelming. Or I have a task that takes a lot of concentration and I have to sit down and really focus. And that can be hard for somebody who has a racing mind. We already talked about folding laundry. That could be something I don't love to do. And I don't know, we can pick another thing. What is something else that we all need to do, but we try and avoid? List your responsibilities there. And then what you're going to do is at the bottom, you're going to write down the activity. So, excuse me, you're going to try and do at least one activity or responsibility each day. So every day you're going to pick one thing I have to do and one thing I love to do. And you're going to be mindful in this task. So I'm going to go out and walk my dog. How did I feel in terms of my mood? Sadness. What did I feel in pleasure? What about achievement? I mean, I know my mood is going to be much better. I'm going to be pretty happy. It's going to give me a lot of pleasure. And do I feel like I achieved something? Well, maybe not so much walking my dog, although it's good for his health, but okay. But then let's go back to, let's say I went through all of my emails. I cleaned out my whole email inbox. How was my mood after that? Probably much less anxious, and also not feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I got to do this. Was it pleasurable? Maybe not as much as walking the dog, but do I feel like I really achieved something? Yeah, and I feel like a whole lot better. So the idea is to build this into like a weekly schedule. So essentially picking things that you avoid, procrastinate on a regular basis and including this in your weekly schedule, and then picking out those things that you know bring you pleasure. And essentially you're just going to set yourself up for success because you're going to use behavioral activation. I'm going to do X task Monday morning at this time. Now, a little tip here. Our bodies are set up on a circadian rhythm. This is so interesting because essentially with our circadian rhythm, we're better at certain things during certain times of the day. According to scientists and research, our coordination is the best in the late afternoon, but our ability to focus is the best in the morning. Think around 10 a.m. So if you have a hard task, and we'll use my example, let me go through all of my emails, or something that you need to focus on, like creating a new presentation that takes a lot of attention and focus. I'm going to set myself up to do that at 10 a.m. And then at noon after lunch, I'm going to maybe read my book for 15 minutes. So again, this idea, we may not feel motivated, but we're going to use behavioral activation, which will then make us feel better. And we will then feel whatever that sense of accomplishment is, how it improves our mood, decreases our anxiety. And the more we do that, that will, instead of procrastinating and things getting worse and feeling more anxious, we will do X activity and improve our mood in the long run. Okay, so tools to practice this week. You have two, the cognitive reframing and the behavioral activation. And remember, you can just pick one to do if feeling like two is overwhelming, and you have the worksheets to be able to walk through those steps. And again, please use the worksheets over and over and over again till you feel like it's become a habit. Thank you so much for being here today. I know that time is a valuable, non-renewable resource, so I really appreciate your attention. And I hope that there is just one thing that you can take away that will make your life a little bit better.